Okay, well, hello everyone. Welcome to the last seminar in the GLS Masterclass series. Before we kick off, just want to do a couple of housekeeping rules. In essence, this is a webinar, so you won't be able to interrupt my wonderful presentation with audio questions. But rather, if you do have any questions at any point throughout the presentation, can you please direct them to my colleague, Ethan Ruft, as a direct message? He will then consolidate all the questions through the presentation, and we will answer those all at the end. So, without further ado, let's explore the topic that has dominated the headlines and the legal news over the last couple of years, legal tech, and what does it mean for the modern practice of law? Good start to the legal tech. Just needs to make the screen move. Okay, so gentle overview of what we're going to be covering today. First, we're going to be setting the scene. What exactly is it that's been making the headlines these days? Secondly, as you'll quickly see, a lot of those headlines are quite excited. So we want to manage some expectations. What exactly is legal tech? Is it overhyped? Is it a fad? What does it mean in practice? To help us explore that question, we're going to get a more sophisticated and hopefully useful definition of what exactly we mean by legal technology. We're going to then move on to the kind of key operational question. How exactly do you implement legal technology into your legal operations, into your transformation agenda, into your legal department in general? What are the do's and don'ts? Finally, we'll wrap it up with some conclusions and some Q&A. So, to set the scene, well, it's fair to say that the press has been quite excited by legal technology of late. I'm sure you've all seen huge numbers being invested. I'm sure you've all seen huge claims made. As of September 2019, $1.2 billion had been invested into legal technology in 2019. That trend has slowed a bit in 2020, but to be fair, it did require a world-ending pandemic to slow it down, and even then, not by much. So, what is actually attracting this investment? Well, the majority of the investment has been targeting what we could call high-tech or ultra-high-tech, i.e. the very top end of the technology spectrum. Examples picked pretty much at random. Kira Systems, it's a machine learning software that has been recently valued at $100 million. The software searches and analyzes contracts and related legal documents. Turbo Patent program, again using AI that tracks the progress of patent applications. Gavalytics, again using AI, in this case, to assess your chances of success in a litigation. The majority of the rest of the investment was still high-end, but slightly simpler, looking at more like automated legal documents. So these were targeting mainly direct-to-commercial legal documents along the lines of fill in your own will, fill in the application form, complete your own purchase orders, etc. Rocket Lawyer in the USA, good example of that. Our company currently valued at $1.5 billion. So why now? Well, it's fair to say that the legal industry is very conservative, and for the longest time, it's been the most resistant to disruption, technological innovation, frankly, almost any effort to improve efficiency. If we have a quick look at a potted history of innovation within the legal industry, our first big change comes in 1874. People start shifting from using quills to typewriters. Then a long gap to 1970. where dictaphones start using magnetic recording tape rather than wax cylinders, meaning that it's possible to take a dictaphone into a meeting or to use it in your office and pass on your typing to your secretary. 1983, Microsoft Word 1.0 is released. Probably the software that most lawyers have used most often in most places around the world. 95 was a big year for technology in the legal industry. In essence, commercially viable email becomes an option as protocols are standardized, and document comparison software saved hundreds of thousands of junior lawyers, hundreds of thousands of sleepless nights, that now a computer program can compare documents rather than having a human eye go line by line. So technology, there's not been a lot of it in the legal industry. And it's all of a sudden an explosion that we've seen over the last couple of years. What is attracting that investment? Well, on the one hand, it's fair to say that the explosion is in a very practical sense been tied to the increasing availability of AI, both for developers to work with, and frankly, the cost has been reduced to the point that it's a viable option for a lot of businesses. Being able to have a software that can genuinely grapple with natural language processing and machine learning is, of course, a holy grail for an industry where language is a critical element rather than raw numbers. But on top of this, we at GLS at least believe that an equally important factor is that in many ways, this recent explosion of technology investment reflects a growth, or is a proxy for a growing realization in the legal industry and for the clients of the legal industry that this industry is rife with inefficiencies, and both clients and lawyers themselves are increasingly adopting an open-minded approach to the possibility that things could actually be improved. That is, we think, as well as the development of AI, a key element of this explosion is finally a shift whereby legal industry participants and the clients of the legal industry are open-minded about the possibility that there can be a way to massively reduce costs, accelerate the acquisition of functional expertise, reduce human error, speed up deal completion, reduce the time required to upskill new members or junior members within a legal team, and finally implement a little bit of data analytics into the way we perform our role. So, with all that excitement in mind, let's manage some expectations. There's a number of commentators out there who have noted that the recent explosion of legal technology investment is very reminiscent of the dot-com bubble of the early 2000s, and before that, the tulip mania of the 15th century. Admittedly, this photograph is not of a tulip, but it's a flower and bubbles, so give us a break. The other end of the spectrum, at least us at GLS, over the last year have gone into a lot of meetings to demonstrate our AI contract review software. And many of those meetings, we're confronted with an expectation that what we're about to do is pull a robotic lawyer out of a briefcase. That means that the potential client can fire his in-house legal team and just replace it with AI magic that's going to do all the lawyering perfectly and instantaneously for them. So that's our spectrum of hot takes. The reality is far more nuanced and somewhere in the middle of those ends. Let's deal with the first elephant in the room. AI is not a lawyer replacement technology. In the same way that Microsoft Excel did not replace your need for an accountant, rather it was a tool that enabled your accountant to do more work to a higher standard, more efficiently, AI is what is the same for lawyers. Legal contract review software and a lot of the high-tech hype that you see is not something that's going to replace your lawyer. Rather, it should be used appropriately to enable that lawyer to do more work to a higher standard and at lower cost. In essence, what we're saying is that legal tech in all its forms are tools that should be properly utilized to enable a function, rather than something that's going to replace that function in its entirety. So, continuing in our vein of managing expectations, a number of you would have recently seen that GLS has recently published the Ultimate Guide to Legal Operations. If you haven't seen it, and you download these slides after the presentation, we have helpfully hyperlinked this title to take you straight to that guide. I bring this up now as a key element of that guide is part K, where we warn you what is going to undermine your efforts to transform your legal department and the productivity thereof. Now, in part K, we also note this. If you're undertaking any kind of transformation exercise, particularly a technology-based transformation exercise, be incredibly wary of salesmen who are going to come and sell you a big shiny box. A big shiny box is going to fix every problem, cost a lot, but be worth it in the end, because it will address every issue in your department and be like a panacea to every headache that you've ever had. Ultimately, these big shiny boxes don't exist. And every time somebody buys them, it's an incredibly undermining exercise. I'm sure a lot of the people on this webinar today have either been directly involved with or felt the pain of large document management system implementations, where a system costs multiple millions of dollars, costs hundreds of thousands of hours as metadata is extracted from an old system of document management and trying to be implemented into a new system of document management. Everybody gets irritated. The tool doesn't work how it's supposed to. The board loses faith in the GC that championed the exercise. And at the end of the day, effectively, the business has $100 million Dropbox accounts that nobody uses properly. This is the risk of big shiny boxes. So, expectations have been managed. Let's get a bit more exciting and get a bit more intelligent about this. In order to avoid such hubris and such implementation disasters, we should start by getting an understanding of exactly what we're talking about when we say legal technology. The term legal tech in recent press coverage has basically been used as shorthand for artificial intelligence or contract automation. These are obviously the exciting new pieces of technology that are out there. But a more useful definition is anything that increases the units of productivity achieved per unit of effort. That might sound pretty dry and scientific, but what we're getting at here is a focus on the R of RPLV, RPLV being the framework for this entire Masterclass series. We're starting to use a definition that allows us to maximize a spectrum of resources that are actually available to your in-house department. This change of perception also means that rather than legal technology being something that is an issue only relevant to the largest, most advanced, wealthiest business in the world, it means that legal technology is a concept that any in-house legal department of any size can access and utilize for their benefit. Again, we're not saying that this more sophisticated definition of technology is excluding AI document review or contract automation. Rather, we're just saying that these are two options in a spectrum, a very wide spectrum of technologies that are available to your in-house department. Again, if you download this slide deck, A, you'll have a list of interesting technologies to use, and B, we've linked them to the GLS Legal Operations Center when you can get any of these technologies. But the point I want to make is this. And whilst AI is a technology, so too is a simple checklist. If you give a junior member of your legal team a checklist of issues to check for when they review an NDA, it will result in the cost of those NDA reviews being reduced. It means that you can leverage your capacity, as suddenly junior members in your team can do more work themselves rather than you having to proofread every line that they've done. And it means that you can free up your capacity to give more strategic, higher value advice to your business. i.e., we're using your resources of time, budget, know-how to leverage the productivity of your department. Okay, so we've got a wide understanding of what legal technology involves. Let's see how we implement it effectively. We're going to start with what not to do. We've already covered the idea that you should definitely avoid buying a shiny box. But there's a few more elements of what goes wrong. There's a few more red flags that you should be aware of before you start implementing technology into your transformation agenda. Typical situation where things go wrong. You want to reduce the costs and increase the efficiency of your department. The board is excited by what they've heard of legal technology in the headlines, and they're ready. They think they're finally prepared to give you a ginormous budget to implement a big technology project into the legal department and overhaul a stagnant and inefficient function. So you jump straight in and you buy the most expensive, highest tech item that you can afford. In fact, in most implementations like this, it goes wrong. Firstly, implementations or technology purchases that are being done is simply as a knee-jerk reaction to constant pressure to reduce costs. Often cost more than expected and don't have the cost reductions or the ongoing budgetary reductions that are expected. These are typically implemented by an in-house legal department that is incredibly excited to go and buy technology for the first time, and so that they don't have to engage with the other stakeholders within their business. This is a critical issue, and one that, to be honest, happens far more often than you might expect. Complicated IT projects for a legal department operate within the IT of the wider business. So if that IT implementation into your legal department, if that IT is implemented into your legal department without due consideration of the IT of the rest of your IT system, it's almost certainly going to fail, and you're certainly going to burn bridges with the other stakeholders within your business. So that's what to avoid. What should you do? Well, as a starting point, GLS, being the helpful souls that we are, has created an implementation framework for you to apply to your own business. Again, as bait to encourage you to download these slides after the presentation, we've broken that implementation framework into details so that you can read in your own time. But I'll highlight a few points at this stage. You need to start by identifying your priorities. Again, it's no good just buying a piece of technology because it's exciting and shiny. You need to identify what you're actually trying to achieve within your legal department and why you're trying to achieve it. It makes it far easier to identify the appropriate technology for you to utilize, and it makes it far easier for you to consider and validate your decisions. Again, one of your key resources in your legal department, and this is something that Matt's brought up on a number of the masterclasses prior to today, is the idea that political capital is a resource for you, and you shouldn't squander it, and you should maximize it like any other resource that your legal department has. So it's important for you to spend it wisely. You want a minimum input, maximum output. That way you get to build on your successes, validate it, encourage other stakeholders within your business to take part in it and contribute to its growth and its success. So, what does that mean? It means start with something simple, start with something effective, start with something that's low risk, and that when it goes right, it's something that your business will appreciate. A good example is the contracting function. Like I say, the key to technology implementations is to remember that technology is a leveraging device. If you set it up correctly, your 1 unit of input can result in 10,000 good outputs. But if that 1 unit of input is bad, all that occurs is that you'll very quickly achieve 10,000 bad outputs. In the legal context, that could be anything from a typo repeated across your entire portfolio of contracts, or an entire portfolio of contracts being deleted by a single fat finger. So, what does this mean? It means that it's essential that you start by getting your low tech right before you progress to the high tech. A very significant benefit being that low tech typically costs less than high tech. It's typically easier to achieve a success with, and it's typically easier to validate your performance outcomes, which enables you to build political capital that you need before you undertake your bigger, higher tech projects. So in the contracting function, we say that first step before implementing any high tech, and don't get me wrong, GLS is more than happy to sell you an AI algorithm. But before you take one on, we would strongly recommend that you start by getting a simple contracting policy in place. Your contracting policy is the fuel to your high-tech Ferrari. Without it, the high technology that you're trying to implement into your department doesn't know what it's trying to achieve, and is therefore very likely to achieve the wrong outcome. So start by getting a contracting policy. It's a simple Word document, and it's a simple bit of effort to consider what exactly it is your business is trying to achieve whenever it enters into a contract. Again, this is a series about RPLV. Second element of RPLV is leverage. It's very important that you start with your contracting policy, because you can then leverage it to create your clause bank. A clause bank being a series of default clauses that cover most elements of most contracts that your business will enter into day to day. Once you have your clause bank, it then becomes very easy and very efficient to produce long form templates of the contracts that you're going to use most days. Once you have your templates built up, you can leverage them to create checklists so that junior members of your legal department can do higher quality reviews on more documents without your input. You can create playbooks which allow non-lawyers within your business to negotiate far more concepts within your contract without having to come to you for your sign-off on every I and T. Again, you're leveraging a position that was established with your low-tech implementation of a contracting policy to free up your capacity, to improve the outcomes of your contracting, to allow your business or to enable your business to do more, make more money, do more deals. If you have these building blocks in place, and in a second I'll show you a timeline of how quickly it is to do that, you can then move on to the higher tech end of the spectrum. If you've got a good set of templates, it's very easy for you to then explore contract automation. Contract automation means that you can produce a new contract in a matter of minutes rather than a matter of hours. You've got your portfolio of contracts with a consistent risk profile across them, consistent layout and metadata across them. It means that you can implement a contract lifecycle management system very easily without spending hundreds of thousands of hours trying to go through chaotic mess of contracts to extract the metadata required to fuel the management system. And we're back to our old friend, AI contract review software. If you've got a playbook, that playbook is what is being fed into the contract review software and enabling your contracts to be reviewed in a matter of minutes, but achieving the outcomes that you've established at the beginning of this process to be what matters to the company, i.e., your AI contract review software reflects what you've established in your contracting policy. Like I say, it's a relatively quick process to implement a suite of technology into an in-house legal department. But a key to it, and I'm trying to emphasize this with this timeline, is that it's not an overnight exercise. Again, it's not like you're going to go and plug a MacBook into your computer system on Friday and on Monday your entire legal department is going to be run by robots. It just simply doesn't work. And frankly, if you're selling technology to your business stakeholders as a big bang, quick smash and grab improvement, in all honesty, you're going to disappoint them, and it's going to be much harder for you to try any other implementations of any other productivity initiative that you want to take forward in the future. This timeline setup that you can see now works slowly from the low tech through to the high tech. Obviously, if your company is more agile, you can shrink this timeline. If you want to go slower, it can be slower. But this is a realistic and frankly comfortable time frame for most clients to implement technology into their world. Now, speaking of useful technologies and transformation planning, again, GLS, being the kind souls that we are, has developed a free tool for in-house legal departments to plan the transformation of their department. We call it the Legal Transformation Tube Map. This map sets out an idealized version of all key functions within a legal department. By doing this, we enable you to identify a logical pathway for your agenda, or a logical step-by-step plan for your agenda. In this case, we're talking about technology today, so you can focus solely on the technology line. Obviously, this is a presentation, so the resolution is relatively low, but if you follow the link on the slide, it'll take you to the live action interactive tube map where you can zoom in, explore, turn on different lines, play to your heart's content. The point I'm making, though, is that you want to approach technology implementation conscious of how technology interacts with each of the other functions. So the spectrum of implementation I gave a couple of slides ago, we're focusing on the contracting line. Using the transformation tube map, it's far easier to visualize how the contracting function interacts with your technology function or your technology agenda. It means that you can identify where you'll get the biggest bang for your buck. Like, what piece of technology should you spend your money on today versus what piece of technology should you spend your money on tomorrow? You can use this to identify what's your most problematic performance areas and consider which will respond to your investment of time, budget, and effort. Remember, in all of these implementations and implementation plannings, we're trying to achieve a minimum input, maximum output characteristic. So, not forgetting the lesson that you should start with the low tech before moving to the high tech. If you would like to see some of the most cutting edge legal technologies available in the market today, again, download the slide deck and click on this image. It'll take you to a recording of our recent Legal Tech Mini Expo, where you can see 5 of the most high-tech pieces of software and available to lawyers today. It'll also give you the chance to register your interest in trying that technology for yourself for free. So again, actually, I say again, it's like purchasing anything. It's a good idea to try before you buy, shop around, get a sense of exactly what that technology will look like in your department on a day-to-day working level before you spend lots of money on it. So click on this slide and I'll get you there. So, Seminar 6. We've charged through the seminar, possibly the most efficient seminar ever given in the Masterclass series. But what have we tried to achieve? We've said that legal technology and the innovation that it brings is long overdue in the legal industry. There are a lot of reasons why the legal industry is conservative, but being conservative is no excuse for not doing your job more efficiently, to a higher standard, and more consistently. With that in mind, we're encouraging you to have a broader awareness of the idea of technology. Define technology as anything that can improve the outcomes for your inputs. That being said, definitely be wary and try to avoid big shiny boxes. They'll cost more than you expect. The outcomes will be underwhelming, and frankly, you'll lose a lot of support that is vital for you to do your day-to-day job. Get your low tech right. It's cheap, it's easy to do, it's easy to validate the outcomes that you're trying to achieve, and you can then leverage your low tech to fuel the high tech so that you achieve the outcomes that are promised by those hyperbolic headlines. This is a concept, the 85-15 ratio is a concept that we draw out more in the legal operations, the ultimate guide to legal operations. But effectively what we're saying here is that you need to avoid a situation where you're going to put a huge amount of effort into it for a short amount of time and then stop. You want to avoid a big bang approach to your implementation of technology, but frankly of any transformation agenda that you have. The problem with those big bang implementations is that frankly, it's exhausting. It's exhausting on your budget. It's exhausting on your human resources. It's exhausting on your political capital. And it means that while you want to implement technology, you might win the argument to implement technology today, but then you can't do anything else for the next 10 years. And for those 10 years, the world moves on a lot. And what you're effectively leaving for yourself or your predecessor down the road is a bigger task, because you're now running on Microsoft DOS rather than Microsoft Windows 10. So apply the 85-15 rule. That means that 85% of your time each week should be on the business as usual. The remaining 15% of your time should be dedicated to transformation projects, whether that's the implementation of technology or transformation in the kind of wider sense covered by the ultimate guide. The idea is to do a little bit of effort consistently over a long period of time. If you're wondering how to apply that effort effectively, apply the implementation framework. Again, if you download the slides, you can read the implementation framework for yourself. But equally, we are GLS, so if you want to contact us for a free trial of software or for support or consultation around the implementation of software into your business, do reach out to us. And finally, if you're excited by any of the technology that we've spoken about today, whether it's the simplest checklist or the most exciting AI software, simply go to the Legal Operations Center. There's a curated selection of technology for you at incredibly accessible prices. So Bill Gates probably influenced more technology than we've used than any other person in the world. And I think he makes a good point when he says that most people overestimate how much they can get done in a year and underestimate how much they can get done in 10 years. What that means for us is that you should be starting with your low tech and implementing steady improvements over a sustainable period of time. That will let you have a hugely successful implementation of technology and a much safer engagement with technology as you go forward. So at this point, moving on to questions. Ethan hasn't actually sent me any questions, so I assume there aren't any. But if anybody is particularly excited to ask a question, now would be a very good time. Otherwise, in the next minute, we'll probably call an end to this presentation and make up some questions for ourselves to answer when we edit together a video and post on the website for you to review in the future. Okay. No questions have come through, so thank you very much for your time. I assume it means that I was incredibly coherent and comprehensive. So we'll move on to what's next. Well, for the first time ever in the Masterclass series, there is no what's next. Rather, there's just free tools and support. If you download the slides, each of these items are hyperlinked so that you can access that tool or that support yourself at your own good time. Specifically, you can rewatch the seminar and you can download the slides. Feel free to share the slides with colleagues, etc. If you want to learn more about legal operations in the wider sense and get a more detailed breakdown of any element of legal operations, the Ultimate Guide really is the ultimate guide. It's freely available and you can read, share, download, do with it as you will. The Ultimate Guide includes the Legal Operations Tube Map. Again, free to play, incredibly helpful tool to help you plan the transformation of your legal department. To produce this seminar, I've borrowed very heavily from a white paper produced by Matt Glynn called How to Avoid a High-Tech Train Wreck. If you want to read that white paper in detail, again, use the links available. Finally, always feel free to book a consultation with GLS if you want assistance with an implementation of technology, or you're considering buying some technology and you'd like a second opinion on whether it's appropriate for your department. And speaking of buying legal technology, always feel more than more than welcome to go to the Legal Operations Center, as there's many channels dedicated to efficiency tools. Thank you very much for your time.